morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the back row from What I Watched Tonight. My name is Matt Hudson, and this is the Retrospective series where I talk about one of my favourite films, a film that's just bloody good, or a film that is mutually liked by me and a guest. And I'm very pleased to say that tonight's guest is a fan of the franchise that we're going to speak about. I have guested on her wonderful podcast before and on her content elsewhere as well. But lest it be from me to try and explain all the wonderful stuff she does, I'm joined by Shannon Moran from Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge. How are you, Shannon?
I am doing fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight. We've had this plan for about 7 or 8 months now, but you know the way the galaxy is at the minute, we haven't quite been able to do it. But I'm excited to do this, and I believe you might be as well.
Oh, I'm very excited. Genuine, very excited. So thank you for having me on. Finally. I know I say finally. I mean, part of it was like, I got very busy and there was like, I'm so sorry. I let's reschedule. And then all of a sudden that was August and now we're in January.
New year.
Yeah.
We're in a new year now. But well, I've just mentioned Postcards and all the other good stuff you do. Just for the benefit of the listeners, what is it you do out there in the pop culture verse?
So it's interesting. I started a kind of Star Wars podcast back in 2019, called Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge. And the funny thing is it started as a way of kind of doing a speech therapy because I unfortunately had a kind of accident where I got smashed in the face and I had a hairline fracture in my upper mandible. It's not your jaw, but anyway. And so I was just kind of getting used to learning how to talk a bit better without having like a lisp and things. So I just was like, okay. And I was just so moved actually by The Last Jedi and things. It just got me really just pedal to the metal into the Star Wars fandom. So of course, you know, getting excited for the final installment, going to Star Wars Celebration, it just kind of snowballed into things. And then bring on last year, I was very fortunate to be added to a network now, which is called the Beyond the Blast Doors Network, where we have, I'm always so bad at this like pitch, but basically we have a different show every day, and it's kind of a different format. So Monday, I'm also part of this show now. Monday is the Holochronicles, and they cover things like collecting. They're very, Josh and Andy hosted. I'm kind of working on the behind the scenes at the moment, but we do everything kind of based on collecting. Tuesday, I mean, we've kind of had a switch around, so you have to forgive me if I'm not exact on my days. Tuesday is Pete Fletzer's Around the Galaxy, which is a kind of interview-based show where we kind of interview, it could be authors from the upcoming or now released High Republic, or it could be, I've been on his show before I was part of the network, so it could be local fans. Wednesday used to be my Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge spot, but it's kind of stopped for a bit, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but or a bit later. So now that's kind of the live news show, which is Beyond the Blast Doors Live, which is hosted by Pete Arzu Amin, who she's a recent network person, and David. And then finally we're wrapping it up with Thursday. I'm trying to think if there's anything on Thursday. There's a couple, like and Friday was traditionally kind of a streaming Star Wars at the time when not anything Star Wars based on Disney Plus, but that's kind of paused. But we now have Fridays a fan call-in show where it's hosted, it's brand new, so that's why I'm like, oh, what's our Friday? But it's hosted by Josh from Holochronicles and Pete from Around the Galaxy and streaming Star Wars. And basically you can phone in, they give you a link, you can phone in and we can talk about anything you'd like. A lot of those shows are all on in American time zones, so that's why a lot of these I'm kind of like, I'm behind the scenes because right when they're kicking it off, it's 3 a.m. here. But yeah, so that's kind of my podcasting stuff. But I've also really just dived into game streaming, and I think that's kind of the direction I'm going as well. So I stream Star Wars games and a few different ones on my Twitch channel, which is Shenanigan Plays. But again, we'll break all that down towards the end. But that is a very long-winded what I do.
In that is not a lot of irons in the fire, I think the phrase is. But honestly, we'll give these socials at the end. But do go check it out, support what Shannon's doing. I've been on the Postcards show to talk about Camino, and it was a bloody good time as well. So obviously I'm biased, but maybe go and check that one out first. check that one out before you check the rest out. But go check those out and support Shannon. And she's mentioned Star Wars an awful lot, so it's probably quite good that we're talking about Star Trek tonight to get to cleanse our palates. But no, tonight's we're actually talking about a film which doesn't really get spoken about enough online, and it's fairly recent. It's Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Now, before we get into what we think about it, obviously you know what we think about it because it's retrospectives. Before we get into our opinions, let me go through the admin. So it's directed by Rian Johnson, who had previously done Brick, The Brothers Bloom, Looper, and after that had done Knives Out. It stars Daisy Ridley, the English Rose, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Andy Serkis, and a whole host of other A-listers, including Kelly Marie Chan, my fave. Mm-hmm. And it had a budget of apparently of $317 million, but it made $1.333 billion worldwide, which is a cool return. Didn't win any Oscars, so it was nominated for 4. Yes. And this is a spoiler-heavy episode. So if you haven't seen The Last Jedi, then please do go watch it. It's 2.5 hours long. If you haven't seen it for some reason and you don't mind getting spoiled, stick around. This is what it's about. The Last Jedi follows Rey as she seeks the aid of Luke Skywalker in hopes of turning the tide for the Resistance in the fight against Kylo Ren and the First Order, while General Leia Organa, Finn and Poe Dameron attempt to escape a First Order attack on the dwindling Resistance fleet. So one last time, spoilers if you haven't seen The Last Jedi. Now, I know you've been very keen to talk about The Last Jedi for a long time, so what is it about this film that pretty much makes you want to sit down for the next hour or so and just go on about it?
I think the thing about The Last Jedi is it really... I think we can all agree it's not the usual Star Wars film. And by saying that, and because of that, you either love it or you hate it. And it came in my life when I was, I dare say, a troubling time. I mean, obviously we're all now in a troubling time now, but at the time I was kind of going through some things. There was a lot of like emotions, and I mean like subtext emotions that I really like felt for both of our main protagonists, that like absolutely just feeling so alone and that no one really understands who you are, or just kind of anything, and that other protagonist being Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, where it's like that elevator scene where he has literally just been ripped down by Snoke. I mean, that face, I know what that's like to be just so emotionally torn apart and being that angry and just breaking shit. So it was just one of those, and I mean, but also on top of that, God, the cinematography, the use of color, oh my God, it just, and it wasn't until I saw The Rise of Skywalker, which again, that's not what we're going to be talking about tonight, but just seeing that in contrast, it still also is very cinematic, so I'm not criticizing, but it just doesn't have the symbolism and the everything Rian Johnson does. And I actually saw this in more of an appreciation in Knives Out. Everything is shown to you for a reason. Everything has a place. It is thought of to the meticulous point, and Knives Out proves that as well. I mean, if you pay attention to what I like is they don't have to hold your hand. And as a filmmaker, Rian Johnson does not hold your hand and go, okay, remember that thing we showed you in the beginning? Guess what? We're going to pay that off and explain to you why we're paying it off. And yeah, but the ironic thing is when I first saw it, it was on my 33rd birthday, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to actually do something really epic. So I met up with 2 buddies and we decided to climb up the O2 on my birthday. Nice. And then afterwards we're going to do the 4D Max, where you're like in the chair and it's 3D. And that's my first seeing of The Last Jedi. And that first shot where like all of a sudden you're going down in the ships, the seats were tilted forward. It was amazing. I was just like,
this... Is that the ones where the seats like vibrate as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't, like someone said, oh, they're going to spray you with smells. No, that didn't happen. But it was such an experience, and it's one of those, they don't do it for all films, like obviously because the technology behind that would take a lot. But it was just so exciting. But fair play to them. Literally the credits rolled. They both looked at me and went, "So, what do you think?" I was like, "Oh, I loved it." They're like, "We hated it," and they and bless them, to their credit, they had seen it before. So God love them. They both were willing to go see a Star Wars film that they absolutely hated, and didn't spoil it for me. Didn't say anything. All they said was like, "We're really interested to see what you think after." And that's all they said. So great couple of friends. Well, one of them broke up with the other, and we don't speak of them. But the other one, we actually ended up working with together later on the Dark Crystal. But it was very cool. So that was very cool of them. And so that was so I didn't see it on opening night. The only thing I ever saw on opening night actually was The Rise of Skywalker. I didn't get the badge though, which I heard you talking about that on Bespins. And I was like, if anyone doesn't want their opening night badge, please, I will take it, because they didn't have it at my Odeon. And I did the triple bill where you watch The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. And it's funny, I didn't realize until seeing all three back to back to back, the very tonal differences kind of thing, and you're like, oh wow, okay, yeah, these are very different. But yeah, so that's just why I really love it so much. And I won't lie, it is that film, The Last Jedi, is what kind of made me what I call myself a Reylo light, where I'm not upset. I am a little, but I mean, I'm not upset that Ben Solo died. I just wish that moment was a bit better in The Rise of Skywalker. But this is where I actually was like, okay, there is clearly some tension here. I didn't see it in The Force Awakens, but I clearly saw it here. And we can break this down a little bit. That whole Force Skype is so brilliantly done. And I just was like, oh my God, I just want to give a hug to both of these people. Like...
Yeah, my opening night, I just went to see it. I didn't scale the O2. I didn't have anything like that. I just sat and went to see it. I remember coming out and thinking, I'm not entirely sure I liked that. Didn't dislike it, but it was so radically different to what I expected. Like not expected, because again, I'm sure we'll touch on fan reaction, but it was a different type of film to what I thought it was going to be. But over the years, well, not long after, but over the years, the appreciation has grown and grown and grown. And I like Rian Johnson as a director anyway, and everything you've just said about Knives Out can easily be thrown right back at, even way back to Brick, his first movie, like neo-noir set in a college. The Brothers Bloom as well, that was kind of like a very much a setup for Knives Out. Looper is magnificent.
Love it.
Looper is just the bee's knees. And then obviously we get The Last Jedi. But yeah, everything you've said about the reaction, like how your friends, a couple of them liked it, or didn't like it, sorry. You did like it. That is pretty much how this film's been divided. And to this day, and I still don't know why. And the tonal shifts in the sequel trilogy, I mean, we've spoken about that, and I think every show's spoken about how there was no clear narrative throughout.
Yeah.
From film to film to film, it's kind of like, I don't know, do what you want, but use the characters and do what you want. And there is that tonal shift, and it does kind of make you feel a bit empty, especially when you watch The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, because The Force Awakens, yes, it may have been derivative to a point, but it's what we needed, and it brought us back, and it was a great film.
It's really what brought, sorry to interrupt you, it's really what brought me back as a Star Wars fan. And I have a respect and a love for the prequels, actually through I say younger fans, they're only like 10 years younger than me. But, when I saw the prequels, I was in like junior high, high school, and college. That was because they came out more every 3 years. So it was like every kind of different school. And some of it was a bit kind of hard to swallow. But obviously now I do appreciate the prequels. But it just kind of made me go, I love Star Wars, but I was just kind of like, okay, I wasn't the fanatic until The Force Awakens came out. And I remember seeing it actually with my parents. I was visiting for Christmas. And American cinemas are amazing compared to British cinemas. You just can't beat it, except if you're doing the 4D thing like I did. But and I just remember being so energized, and I just turned to my parents. I literally jumped out of my seat, and I was like, that's what the prequels needed to be. And I guess I was talking about it from, and not realizing at the time, but talking about it from a visual effect aspect, because of people, well, until very recently, my day job for about 7 to 8 years was I worked professionally in visual effects. So I worked at some of the top, tier companies. Sadly, not ILM. I was so close, and you will see this.
I remember you saying.
And you'll see this in my video I'm releasing called My Year in Star Wars, I was literally so close, and then the world went on lockdown 3 days later. But anyway, so I'm very much now look at things through a visual effect eye and things. And what I loved, I think, about the sequel trilogy is the use of practical and visual, and it's the right mixture. It's not, I mean, obviously the visual effects in the original trilogy is fantastic, and groundbreaking. And that's why we have Industrial Light and Magic and things like that. But the prequels relied almost too much on CG and things like that. But kind of seeing that it's good. It's almost like you had to go so far for them to be like, okay, now we need to pull it back. So, I mean, it's one of those that kind of is a good caveat where it's like, okay, we've now pushed the technology super, super far. And because of that technology, I did, a job with being an offline editor, because George Lucas, it's now called Avid, but called it Edit Droid. And that's where your Adobe Premieres and Final Cut Pros and Avids are. They're called NLEs in the industry, but that's your editing software. And that's because of him. So I have a job and a career because of George Lucas.
Because of the maker himself. And
yes.
That's it, the prequels. I mean, yeah, we know what they look like, but the amount of stuff going on behind the scenes, the amount of... Because everyone hears, George is the pioneer, but without George, we don't have a lot. Obviously, ILM, Skywalker Sound, things like Pixar. The prequels gave us Ahmed Best, who gave us Jar Jar Binks, which gave us Gollum, Thanos, as he said himself. And there's so much more going on. And like you've just said, things like the software going on in the background and the hardware, the prequels were ahead of their time, but that was their problem. George was so ambitious that, he was too ambitious. What he thought he could, his reach out what it stretches, grasp, whatever that phrase is. But with these films, the amalgamation of practical and CG is wonderful. And The Last Jedi does a wicked job. And Rian Johnson, he built something he didn't, but he had commissioned 120 something sets to be built, which is unreal. It's a huge set. So, but I dig this film so much now. Every time I rewatch it, I find something new to love. Visually, it's the best looking Star Wars film of the lot, and it probably will be for an awful long time. And obviously what came after, it just couldn't hold a flame to the visuals of this film. But let's talk about The Last Jedi then. As listeners to the show know, we just basically gush about what we love about the film. It might be all over the place, it might not be, but that is the fun of retrospective. So throwing the floor over to yourself then, Shannon. The first question is, when you think of The Last Jedi, what's kind of like the one thing you think of?
The throne room fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Actually, in that 4D Max thing, wouldn't it have been cool if when Snoke is bisected, he kind of got like sprayed with his wet stuff?
Oh, do you know what? I guess for me, because I'm like, well, it's kind of like a blowtorch, so it's going to cauterize them. We don't need the gore. I don't know. Like, I remember seeing it. There was 2 moments in that film that literally I was hitting my buddy Charlie in the arm. I do this when I get so excited and I feel bad. It comes over me. And
beat your friends up.
Yeah. Fair warning to anyone who ever watches me on the right-hand side, you're left. Watch your left. But basically my only slight critique is of the throne room scene are 2 things. I wish they didn't telegraph and show the lightsaber turning by Snoke. That's the only, I would have literally just taken that shot out. And then so what got me like so pumped was when she caught the lightsaber, because God love her, she's catching these lightsabers every freaking movie and I love it. But that she catches it, the music swells, and there's that moment they look at each other, and then when it goes into slow motion and it's in the wide. We've never seen a lightsaber brawl. This isn't just a fight. This is a brawl in the wide, and it continues to be in the wide. My only critique on that is they should have just slightly pushed the camera in a bit, because you can see kind of the stunt guys stop and then go back, and it's kind of like, so it looks obviously very staged, but choreographed. Like I kind of did it. I hate these fix it kind of things that people put on YouTube, but I just did it for myself. I was like, yeah, if they would have just pushed in 5%, that would have been awesome. But I mean, I love the back to back, and of course everyone loves the whole like thigh grab, but that was a really cool kind of. Yeah, it's awesome. And I just was like, what is happening? Like, because you've never seen that. I mean, the closest thing we had to that was Darth Vader in the original trilogy saving Luke. So we hadn't had that, oh my God, they're teaming up kind of thing. And yeah, Oh, yes. So that's the big one. And then, of course, then Yoda appearing, but we'll come. Yeah, oh, that's good. That's very good. As you're like coughing.
I can't do any more because it'll kill my throat. But dude, that throne room scene, when I saw that in a theatre, I almost punched a person next to me. I didn't even know them because it was just like, come on, we've like you said, the staging of the fight. It's not even a duel. The fight, like I say, it's a brawl. It's a scuffle. Like you got 4 of them on Kylo and 1 on Rey. They know they think they know who the threat is in this moment.
Yes.
But at Rey, she's angry. She's screaming. It's great. She's lopping heads off. It's brilliant. And like I know what you mean though about the 5%, because one of my big bugbears in film is when you have a larger scale battle and you've got one protagonist facing off against multiple antagonists. The first thing you think of is, why don't you just bundle in on the guy?
Yeah.
But then you can kind of see them in the background, like really sometimes quite lazily trying not to look like they're staying back whilst trying to look like they're advancing. And I know I hear what you mean. That's the one problem you get in these kind of fights, is trying to get around that like real world logic of, you could easily take these people down easily. You could take them down easier if you just properly gang up. But no, honestly, the way that looked, the music, everything before it, because this whole film is about obviously failure and hope. Yeah. Rey fails in this film. Yes, everybody's listening. She fails again in this film because she allows herself to be captured because she's naive enough to think that it's Ben Solo is communicating with her and he's going to change. So she gets captured and is to be summarily executed. Snoke's just like, just kill her. But I totally agree with you. If they didn't show the shot of the lightsaber turning towards Snoke, then this would be possibly the best one, or at least top 3 of them all in Star Wars of a scene, because I didn't expect them to kill Snoke off. I generally didn't. Yeah. But I love the fact they did because of the potential it could have given the story. But honestly, that is wonderful. And then what comes after in terms of them fighting over the saber, you think they're going to come together. You find out that Rey is a nobody, which is the best thing that could have happened. And then the Holdo maneuver, and god damn, there's so much in this film that I love.
Well, it's funny because like when I saw it initially, I was there with the whole, after The Force Awakens, we all remember it. Who's Rey's parents? And I was Camp Kenobi the whole way. I was like, yep, she can be a Kenobi, blah, 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 blah.
It was the same as well. But then I also did think, and this is where it came out to bite me on the arse big time, I was really up for the idea of like the whole Rey Palpatine thing before The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. Because I was like, right, so our protagonist is, I assumed, naturally, part of a natural bloodline from the most evil person in the galaxy. It's like, well, that's great. The light is actually born from the dark. Wonderful. There's so much potential there, but obviously it didn't quite pan out. Thought it would.
No, but so I actually, when that whole reveal happened at first, they were nobody, I was just like, what? What? And actually, I didn't like it at first. And it wasn't, I forget whose video I watched, but I watched someone who had a great kind of like video essay on why that was such a strong choice. And the more I just kind of digested it, I was like, actually, this is a strong and bold choice. And actually, I'm all for it. And that's a great message. And then that is what the point of Broom Boy is at the end and things like that. And I think that's why I now have the biggest problem with The Rise of Skywalker, was because once again, I'm having to come to grips with a reveal that just, what? But anyway, I digress. But no, I love that fight. And the emotion, like, the way she's saying like they were nobody, and I know some people are like, oh, he's being abusive and saying no, that's not quite what he's saying. But what he's basically, and just, it's very Pride and Prejudice. He's just really sucking at this like proposal. When I say proposal, I don't mean marriage proposal. I mean like just a joining up proposal, and he's blowing it like Darcy does. He's blowing it, but it's one of those.
But not to me.
Yeah, and that moment, but the editing is brilliant too. That moment where he said, "But not to me," and the way she literally just kind of, her eyes just slightly shift, and she takes a breath, and it's just it's the best, like, what, without being overacting, and that was that's the whole thing. This worked because of those two actors. Like, this could have been terrible. I mean, we saw it. I'm sorry, prequel people, but the chemistry between Anakin and Padme just doesn't work. Does not work, especially in Attack of the Clones. It is so forced because it has to happen. But with these two, it's like, it's so plus they're both brilliant. I can't wait. I really want Daisy to be able to like be in more. I'm actually really excited to see her in Chaos Walking. God bless that film, which has been in like production hell for 3 years.
It actually coming out, for God, because she's what? She's like 8 years old in that film. By the time it's actually filmed, it's like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I think she's got the. I was speaking to my friend John about this. She's the one I'm most, obviously because she's the English Rose, but she's the one who I'm most interested about because Boyega. Yeah, I mean, look, Adam Driver, Oscar Isaac, they're not going to have any shortage of offers. Yeah. Boyega's taken some interesting roles, but Daisy Ridley, I mean, she said before she was struggled to get roles initially at the beginning of 2020, but not so much now. I'm interested to see where she goes. Does she go, like, does she continue down this kind of action path with like Spider-Girl and Batgirl? Because she's doing a lot of voiceover, like for Eastern voiceover, or does she do? Because she did Ophelia, which is very good in.
I need to see that. You have to hook me up with a copy. I want to see Ophelia so bad. I cannot find it anywhere.
It is a very decent film. It's an absolutely stunning film as well. The DOP, Denson Baker, if you're listening, you're a king. I've told him many times how the most beautiful film of that year that was looking. But I'm just interested to see where she goes because I know it's not a Daisy Ridley discussion, but I think it's very interesting because everybody else seems to kind of have their path set up, apart from Daisy, and I think she was really good in each film. She got better and better, and in the Rise of Skywalker, I think she was great still. But in these scenes where the kind of softer yet still powerful scenes with Kylo, like the one you've just said, it's testament to how good they both are together, but just individually as well. We know Adam Driver is a great actor, but Daisy Ridley is showing what a great actress she is.
Well, she had a moment in the Last Jedi that really spoke to me, and I said this on Blue Bantha Milk's podcast that they were doing during Pride. I don't usually wear on my shoulder that I'm part of the LGBT community, but at the time when this came out, that monologue where like, you know, Luke is in the cave and he's like, "Who are you?" And you know, you could tell she's doing her usual like, "Oh, I'm you know, the spiel of, oh, I'm the Resistance, blah 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 blah." He's like, no. Why are you here? And I just love the camera moves close just to like, you know, the kind of mid to almost close, and you can tell like she just has this wonderful, like, she's trying to find the words because she's about to vocalize something she's never told anybody kind of thing. And that could be anything in our lives. That could be it coming out, admitting you have a substance abuse problem, you know, you have financial woes, whatever. And then so that something inside me has always been there, you know, and just the way she just delivers it. And there's I think only 2 cutaways to Luke, and it's just brilliant. And at the time I was dealing with unfortunately a kind of relapse in my epilepsy. So I know what that feels like to be like, you have something going on in your body and you're like, I don't know what this is. And it scares people kind of thing. You know, that's the other thing. I think there's a lot of questions that are left at the end of the Last Jedi, which we'll touch on a little bit, that, you know, I think a lot of people didn't quite consider. But anyway, so her delivery on that is fantastic. And I just was like, God damn, she's amazing. And plus I was a bit biased because we had just finished doing the visual effects for Murder on the Orient Express.
Of course, she's in that, yes.
So yes, the windows in the background on the trains, that was me. And George Murphy.
You were the windows? Wow.
Well, what I did was basically, I was sicker than a dog, but I went through 4K footage, like 12, 16, 18 hours of 4K footage, and just try to pick out the best bits, and then would show it to the supervisor, who then would have Kenneth Branagh, who came in, and I only said hi to him once, and I had to be careful. All my British friends were smacking their heads because I was like, "Oh, that's the Harry Potter dude." They're like, "Oh, no, hon, please do not say, oh, you were in Harry Potter. He is like a British legend." I was like, "Gotcha."
I think of his name now in Harry Potter. He was the like, really arrogant dude, wasn't he?
He was, but he's such a lovely man. But yeah, and we would go through the windows and he'd be like, "Okay, yep, that works for this." And I mean, he knew what was for what. So anyway, it's so funny when they talk about the big LED screens, and this is before we had, you know, the volume and things. Josh Gad was talking about like being motion sick and also Daisy. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, that was me. That kind of made you motion sick. When I say me, obviously I didn't film it, so it's always with anything visual effects, it's a team. But yeah, it's funny that the lens flare where the train goes through the tunnel, I was like, that's going to be a shot, and sure enough, it got to keep in there. So anyway, that being said, so I was getting Daisy at work, and then I seeing her. I was just like, this is awesome. And I was always like, God, if I ever saw you in the tube, would I have the courage just to say hi? And then I'd be like, no, because you want to be left alone, probably.
That time when you felt motion sickness on the Murder on Orient Express, yeah, that was me.
I was like,
by the way,
that was me. Sorry about that.
Here's my card.
Sorry about that.
She's great in this, and everybody is, as a whole as well. Everybody is really. And Mark Hamill is, regardless of what he did or didn't say, or the comments which he's since clarified, we never said he didn't like the character. He just didn't agree with it, but he's since come out and said, you know what, having now seen it and how it all panned out, Ryan did a great job. So he has come out. But Mark Hamill is unreal in this. I think it's his best performance.
Yeah.
Daniel Gleeson, that's one of my big bugbears about this, but I'll mention that later on. Oscar Isaac's good in this. John Boyega's good. Kelly Marie Tran. I was one of the. I wouldn't say one of the few people, but it seems to me like I was one of the few people who came out of this and was like, I really like the character of Rose, and I really like Kelly Marie Tran.
Me too. And I literally had it in my head canon because she was a mechanic and Ray was a mechanic. I wanted that girls working together. I shouldn't say girls, ladies, women working together, because I know some people interpreted like Ray looking at Finn and Rose as she's jealous. No, she wasn't. She was just like, oh, I care for someone like that too, but I can't care for them right now. But that's just my interpretation of it. But I was dying for that in The Rise of Skywalker. I was like, oh my God, give me Rose and Ray. Absolutely. And anything in my headcanon or any little fan fictions I write, they team up. They help each other out. Like, I wanted her to help her build her lightsaber, kind of thing, where it was like they help each other out. So I love Kelly Marie Tran, and I'm so excited for Raya and the Last Dragon, or whatever it's called. Oh, I'm so pumped.
Again, we thought apparently internet said that she hates Disney, but last I checked, Raya was very much a Disney production. So again, don't always believe what you hear online. But this told it also on. You're talking obviously like the search for identity. That's exactly what Ryan said this film was about, and especially Ray, and that's why I wanted to ask you about as well, because we've kind of already answered actually. But the scene where Kylo says to her, "No, you tell me who your parents are." He doesn't tell her; she tells him they're no one.
She does,
But Ryan's exact quote on this, and this is, I love this quote, and again, and I don't want to bash on any other film, and I'm not going to. I'm going to draw my own line here, but this is what just gets to me. But Ryan said this about the mirror scene in general when Ray's in the cave, which is in the mirror. He says, the easiest thing for Ray and the audience to hear is, oh yeah, you're so-and-so's daughter. Mm-hmm. That would be wish fulfillment and instantly hand her a place in this story on a silver platter. The hardest thing for her to hear is she's not going to get that easy answer. You're going to have to find the strength to stand on your own 2 feet and define yourself in this story. And if anybody ever says, the idea of her being a nobody isn't good for the story, that quote in itself is it.
Yeah.
You've got to find the strength to stand on your own feet. Carve your own path in this story. Don't have it that you're royal lineage or you're a descendant of a Jedi or Palpatine or Sith. Just have her be herself. Yeah. I'm Rey, and then that actually opens the door potentially for so many more other storylines like this, where anybody can rise up, a la Broom Boy. But the search for identity is all over this. The search for hope and failure. A lot of people don't like this film as well, so I hear, because of the theme of failure. Do you know what Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker is a quote-unquote failure. Poe fails, Finn fails, Rey fails in this, but everybody does. But what did you think about that kind of side of it? Because there's a clear arc through this film for so many characters, isn't there?
Well, it's interesting because this film makes me really not like Poe at all. I'm like, you are an arrogant asshole. I do not like you and things. But it's so interesting because recently, obviously, we know in 2020, we celebrated the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. And it's funny, it's the exact same thing. That movie, everybody fails. And it's like, I don't know. I guess I understand things need to be uplifting and you need kind of that, hey, happily ever after, because obviously too much doom and gloom, you're just like, oh God. But you also need stakes, and things that you just like, oh, how to say it, but you need consequences and you need challenges, because otherwise you're just kind of like, okay. And I think that's why this was so hard. But I genuinely think
predictable. It gets stale very quickly.
It does, exactly. And I guess for me, that's why I think there were some much smarter people than me at the time that were doing comparisons that I was like, this would be the exact same criticisms that people would have done 37 years ago for, Empire Strikes Back. So I guess for me, I didn't mind it. Like, I didn't mind Luke being the hermit, because I guess for me, Luke has not been like, oh my God, he's my hero. Whereas my better half is, she cannot stand The Last Jedi. Whereas we are definitely a house divided. But
mental.
But which is fine. It's great, and it makes great.
No, I mean that you've already said, like you saw it with your friends, or one friend and an ex-friend, and they didn't like it, whereas you did. You like it, and your partner does. It seems to be that doesn't matter who you speak to. When we were at MCM covering that for the sessions, we were asking people about The Last Jedi, or we weren't even asking. We're just asking what their favourite film were, what Star Wars films were, and a lot of people would say the obvious, but every 2 or 3 people always say anything but The Last Jedi, and we'd always say like, why? No, nobody could give a very good reason, but so many people would say that, and again it's subjective. If people just don't like the film, that's fine. Just like I'm not the biggest fan of like The Shape of Water. I didn't really like that film. Won the Best Picture, and everyone tells me I should do, but I don't really like it. But I don't go online and type all over the damn film.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just find it really interesting that like it doesn't matter who you speak to, like one every like 3 people is like, no, I hated it.
I think because it's a bold choice to make your hero of the original trilogy kind of basically leave his sister in the lurch. Like, I don't know if it's ever explained in canon, like how long it's been since they've seen each other. So
at least to be fair, that hasn't, because in Aftermath they don't say whether he was there for the birth of Ben. They kind of hint that he may have popped in or out.
Yeah,
he was with the Ben Solo thing happened 6 years before The Force Awakens,
so 6 or 7. So
Bloodline was about 6 or 7 years before, and they mentioned that they hadn't seen him for a while. So I reckon at least potentially a decade.
Yeah, so I mean, so some people are gonna. I get that critique, but I think it's a stronger choice to kind of be. And again, and actually, The Mandalorian is kind of helping that point where here's this beacon of hope. You're seeing that, and that's the other thing that this wears down on you when you're this constant beacon. Like you're like under a microscope kind of thing. So I mean, it's showing that people are going to know in the galaxy who he is, and I don't know. I didn't have a problem with that. And also, like, I remember Cheryl asking me, like, how did you feel about Luke dying? I was like, I guess because in Star Wars, I'm like, well, no one's ever really gone.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I will say I did cry when the two of them were talking, but only because we had just lost Carrie Fisher. So it was very haunting to hear her say, I'm glad you're here, and him saying no one's ever really gone. And, she's talking about obviously Han and Ben and everything. But I mean, but him saying that to her, and she literally had passed, like, God, I think a week.
Not long after.
I think the week of the premiere, or because
it was
the year prior. Sorry, it was the year prior.
So they finished filming, and then of course, and then the film was dedicated to her. Of course.
So that was so heartbreaking. I was just literally like, that's the only times in the sequel trilogy that's ever made me cry. Is that scene in the Last Jedi, and Chewie's reaction in The Rise of Skywalker, just that howling. Oh my God. Like
people say, oh, well, they brought the OG back to kill them off. It's like, well, they kind of not the passing of the torch. Like, firstly, they kind of have to, because you can't keep people around and as mortality has shown, nobody's here forever, and people could be taken at any moment, which is a sad, transient way of life. It stops for nobody, which is the worst part of it. But it's when it's done right. Like, I think Luke Skywalker was perfect in The Last Jedi, and this is pre-Mandalorian. What we knew of him was he was a bit of a whiny sod, and then he became the hero in Return of the Jedi. He was almost a pacifist. He threw his lightsaber away. I'm a Jedi like my governor before me. I'm not going to fight you. In The Last Jedi, I don't want to fight anyone. look, what do you think I'm going to do? Take everyone down? And it was just a lot of fan theories of what Luke's going to do didn't happen, and a lot of people just didn't like it. And again, fair play if that's what you thought, but I thought it was so well done. And that moment between Luke and Leia, people had, and I was one of them, had worries beforehand. I was like, can Carrie and Mark carry scenes on their own anymore? This is pre The Force Awakens as well, and I was kind of worried, like, Christ, how's Mark Hamill going to carry The Last Jedi or part of it? How's Carrie Fisher going to stand up to it? And in that scene, it's just like, you don't have to worry about anything. And I know it's towards the end of the film, but and obviously, I know you would have seen the director and the Jedi and the the other takes, but those two just went in for it, and it's
and the emotional recall. Because before I did like visual effects and things, I used to study theater. So there's an acting, a Stanislavski acting kind of technique called emotional recall, where basically you call on real things in your life to then get that emotion out. So it's got to be careful. It can be quite dangerous, but to get that. And that's why you have you saw it in, but the director and the Jedi, or I think this was called, forgive me, the minute Daisy Ridley's done with that scene, he's going up to her, and you have to kind of talk him down, because you're like, you got to come back to Earth, and it's kind of like, you did great, that was beautiful, you're okay. And you can tell she's like genuinely like kind of like, okay, bringing it back in. And he actually does it to Carrie too, and that's, and he says, take your time, let us know when you're ready. And then that's when she's like, I'm ready. So I mean, it makes me wonder, God, what was she thinking about? But and it shows that they really can act, kind of thing. Because even me, I was like, Mark Hamill, really? To me, Mark Hamill's the Joker. That's, of course, he's Luke Skywalker and he's the Joker.
And the cock knocker in Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, and now also the scientist in the Dark Crystal. Let me tell you, that was so crazy.
You worked on that, and I know Luke, my sessions co-host and the King, he adores that, and so does Pevy. And I like the Dark Crystal, but the Resistance was just incredible. And we were also and I'm sure you were also very sad to see that it wasn't renewed.
Oh my God, we were so heartbroken, because we're waiting in the wings, because the show was what they call a sole vendor, which is very rare in visual effects, where one visual effect house does all of it. But it was a massive show. I mean, I learned so much being on it, but it was amazing. It was my first on-screen credit, that and Lion King, first and only. But hearing well, we'll see. But hearing like Mark Hamill's voice, I mean, it's kind of, some of his voice things start to sound the same, but it was just so cool. And so, anyway, he's always, though, the Joker to me. I remember my mom telling me as a kid, going, hey, that animated series you love watching? Guess who's the voice of the Joker? I was like, who? They're like, you remember Luke Skywalker? I was like, no.
No way. And he's so good at it.
He is. So, I mean, that laugh, oh my God. So, yeah. But that's why I was like, God, can he be acting in this? And I will say, kind of talking about, I didn't like a lot of the humor in The Last Jedi.
Neither did I.
I will say that is something that The Rise of Skywalker brought back brilliantly, was the humor. But I will say, I do love the branch moment kind of thing.
Reach out.
Yeah. But it's funny when like Rey says, you meant like reach out. I can hear like Daisy's like real voice kind of thing.
Yes. He does have a lot of Daisy-isms throughout some of the film, but there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Rey is Daisy.
Yeah. But that was like the one I did kind of like. But some of the other ones, like the humor is kind of what fell flat. And I will say, just one of my critiques of The Last Jedi, it was such a different and kind of almost gimmick, but I also think it was a detriment to the trilogy to have one film literally pick up where one ended, because you had no time to let character development kind of happen off screen. And so, I mean, it was cool to be like, okay, yeah, we're literally picking up in The Last Jedi right where we left off. But at the same time, it was just like, and I agree with some of the criticisms where like, yeah, but now we have everything happening within just like technically 2 years of the era kind of thing. Whereas I think the original trilogy, it's, help me out, maybe 7 years in total?
Yeah, between A New Hope and Empire is at least 3 years, I think, and Empire and Jedi is at least a year, I think. So I think it's like between 4 to 6 years. I know that, and the prequels is obviously like a big old, like almost 2 decades, like 20 years almost.
But it's tricky because then how would we get one of our main protagonists to find her way in the story. I don't know. So I mean, that's obviously the counter argument, because that is kind of the point of the second one. But it just, I don't know. I mean, I guess the same thing happened with Empire Strikes Back. So I don't know. I think if I could have things slightly changed and also I think it would take out the quote Mary Sue aspect of it. Like, that made me really angry. Now, I will say, even though I don't like the reveal of Rey being a Palpatine in Tros, it helped me not, because even I was starting to think, okay, I love Homegirl through and through, but she's starting to get a little overpowered here, kind of thing. So
Starkiller could do it.
Say again?
Nobody minds Galen Starkiller doing it. I don't care that he was a clone of Vader. He was still able to do unreal things previously, and he's seen as like a hero of the EU.
I do love that game, and actually, I'm doing that. I'm streaming it right now on Thursdays. The Force Unleashed.
Without realizing.
Yeah, that's a game I actually waited in line. I remember because I lived in Colorado at the time, and actually waited for the midnight release, but got the PS2 version, not the PS3, because that was like what we're dealing with right now was the cross gens kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. And I like the introductions of new force powers. So that's why I didn't mind the astral projection from Luke. And I don't know, like, I think that's my only criticism. It's tricky because it's like, I wanted more from Finn as well. And I will say Canto Bight, it was cool to see kind of like the riches of the galaxy, but it is tricky. Like, I want to like that scene because also
I have to ask you then, because you set me up there. I was initially, in my initial review, I was like, I'm not sure about that Canto Bight side quest. It just felt a bit naff, to be honest. But now it's possibly one of my favourite parts of the film. I love it. And everybody I've asked, and I know you haven't outright said, look, I hate that scene, I don't like it at all. But a lot of people, when you say, what is it about the film you don't like? They immediately say Canto Bight. And I always say, why? And again, this isn't me being an elitist or a snob, but nobody ever gives a good reason why.
Oh, I can.
I'm just interested as to your thoughts as to why, it maybe didn't quite work as well as the rest of the film.
DJ Stammer.
Need a lift?
Yeah. As someone who has a brother who has a stammer, it didn't
play for comedy.
It didn't serve the purpose of the character. Like, if like maybe he had been hit in the head or something, or like maybe he had been shocked too many times by being a code breaker or whatever. Like, that was the other problem I had with this was, let's find the master code breaker. I'm all down for that. I even like the bait and switch that it's like, oh, we think it's this guy because of the red plum bloom. But what would have been awesome, but it just sounds, so I was like, wait, so we found another person who's a great code breaker who happens to be in the prison cell. Now, the way I would say that could kind of have helped it, have him have a tattoo of a red plum bloom on his, like, quote, lapel, that from a certain point of view thing or whatever. That would have been fine with me then. That's the biggest thing is the DJ character. I loved what he was saying, that it's like, hey, it's the same machine. Because again, that was also a very strong choice. But it just was like the delivery. Like, I love the Fathiers. I loved, because I'm all about animal, protection and, cruelty to animals. I loved, how like Rose freed them. And I mean, and I love that. Like, there's stuff of Canto Bight I like, but for me, I can tell you the reason why I don't like Canto Bight is DJ. And it's a shame because, oh my God, Benicio del Toro is a brilliant actor. I don't like his choices personally. And I think it literally, if he didn't have a stammer or they slightly, not obviously like I'm kind of contradicting myself, but you don't have to explain everything, but it just would have been, I don't know, like he has it because he's been shocked or something. It just seemed it served no purpose. I'm very much like, if you're going to have a choice, and maybe this is my own acting training, if you're going to make a choice, you need to have a reason why. And so I just couldn't see the reason why that he had that. So anyway, there, I could actually give you a reason why I don't like Canto Bight, but
reason. No, that's fair enough. I always hear a lot of people say, well, the space horses and Rose and Finn, you could take the entire sequence out and it doesn't change the film. It absolutely changes the film because it teaches Finn a lot of lessons from DJ. It allows for Finn to fail. Even post like they didn't make it, but Finn goes on this kind of like jaunt around the galaxy because he thinks he can save the day because that's what heroes do. And no, he almost gets the Resistance blown to pieces because DJ, which I loved as well, DJ sells the Resistance out for a quick buck on a ship. Yeah. I love that. I like the fact that DJ takes the Hazian smelt pendant from Rose, and we think, oh, what a sod! He's taken her like heirloom. Yeah. Turns out he needed it to get into the control room. He gives it back, and we're like, what a nice guy! Yeah. What a dude! And the next thing is like, maybe he's selling them out. I like that because it's like, Jesus, where are we going here? You can't trust anyone. That is very much a Rian Johnson type of trope. But, so I love the look of the planet. I like the look of the place. I love obviously the camera technique, which Ryan said was taken directly from Wings. I think old film.
The French one, right? The silent film one where it's going through.
Yeah, the trolley shot. Yeah, the big mental shot.
Right behind the scenes there, you blink and you miss it. There's actually 2 lesbians in that. Not in The Last Jedi, but in that film, in that silent film.
I never knew that. There you go.
It's on the right hand side. Yeah, it's on the right hand side, and one is in drag, and it is a woman. And I mean, me and Cheryl, but sorry, that's my partner's name. We had to rewind it. We're like, hang on a second.
That's how a lot of people got sort of like skirted around the restrictions of the time, isn't it? By one would be in drag, and it's a good spot actually. I hadn't. Wings is a film I've seen once and many years ago. And I wanted to go back and watch it because of the clear like homage that Ryan showed. And again, he said it himself. But I'd like to go back. I'll probably just YouTube that scene to see if I can.
I'll have to find it for you. Be like, see, this is what I'm talking about.
Please do, yeah. There you go then. But I really dig the Canto Bight scene. I just like the look of the place. It felt new. It felt like a callback to the prequels, and I love when they go to new places and it isn't just a sandy planet. And Cantonica as a planet is just like it's a dive basically. It is basically just a desert planet, but there's this one little corner where it's kind of like this man-made paradise, and I like it. I like how they did that, and there's and I'm trying to think. There's so much about that. Okay, right.
I have a question for you, actually.
Oh, cool. Go on.
So in the Jedi and the director. I'm sorry. The documentary that came on with, which by the way is a brilliant documentary in itself, and the way it's edited, there has not been. I mean, I always watch Empire of Dreams. I think 3 times a year, anytime I need to pick me up. But this one, I mean, he was literally, if you think about it, was doing 2 films at once. He always had a documentary in mind and his film. So some people will say that's egotistical, whatever. I am here for the behind the scenes stuff. My question to you, when he is talking to the costumer, I forget Neil I don't think it's Neil Scanlon.
No, I know who you mean. It'll come to me shortly, but I know who you mean.
About Rose and Finn, there is a time that Rose was supposed to show up in like a full gown and outfit, because he even talks about there's a moment where Finn is just like, whoa, hang on a second, and you don't see her as this dusty, mechanic kind of thing. It makes you, I want to kind of do a little speculation here. What do you think the concept of that was, and why did we lose it? I mean, I could think of some practical reasons of why we lost it, but it's interesting. Because they kept it in it. He talks about, yes, we're going to have it to, this is the moment where we see her in the gown and blah, 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 blah.
It's Michael Kaplan. I just found that's the dude's name, costume designer. Well, obviously, like the practical reasons of that's like timing, and it's another thread which you then have to be like, well, where did you get these? Where did you get the money? Where did you get these clothes? Where did you procure them for your prom? But I just think for me, it would have been a right kind of like curveball. It's like this is how we know Rose. She said it herself. She's had a life on the pipes. She works on pipes, and then to kind of bring her out with a nightgown on and evening wear on, and probably hair, paired and probably makeup done. It would have felt, to me, I'm trying to think of the particular word, but not objectifying, but just kind of like, would it? Here she is wearing overalls, but here's also her, looking stunning and beautiful and made up, and then Finn's like, oh wow, suddenly this Rose chick's okay. It wouldn't have worked for me because listen, Kelly Marie Tran is a beautiful woman, but the character of Rose works because she is like she's a backbencher. She's a substitute character in the sense that, you know, in the story, she's the mechanic who then gets brought on in the 90th minute to help save the day. So that's how she works best. And obviously then the Rise of Skywalker, for the very little we get, she still carries that role along. She's the pragmatist who knows who she is, and she knows her skills and qualities. And she's the more grounding aspect of both films for me. So to then take that out, whether that was for seriousness or levity, because like you said, the comedy clanged a lot in this film. I think it actually could have been quite detrimental to both characters, especially Finn, if he was suddenly then like, well, I like Rey, but I also like Rose now because she's got dressed up. I don't know.
Did you ever... Okay, so I'm curious about this, because obviously there's the kiss between those two, which I didn't mind. I know, I remember it's the only time my buddy next to me did scoff was the whole... Well, that and Mary Poppins Leia, which we haven't touched on, but was the whole... you know, the kiss and everything, and he kind of giggled at that. I didn't mind it because it's true. Like, I mean, that line is what we need right now. We're not fighting what we hate; it's saving what we love, kind of thing.
It's a great line.
It's a great line. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just was like, I never got the vibe that like Finn was in love with Rey. I got the vibe, like, I've always gotten literally just the friendship vibe. And that, like I said, that was before I was like, quote, Reylo light. Like, I got that in The Force Awakens. Like, they're for each other's first kind of friends, you know, I don't know. But I was just curious if you got that, because you just said, oh, you know, about the objectifying and things.
Yeah, it's good. Again, maybe that's just me looking into it, obviously, or just in the climate we live in, or just from like a film angle. How would it have worked narratively? And then, you know, would she have carried on? Would she have been captured by the First Order dressed like that? Because you'd stand out quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's a lot more that could have come from it, which would have negatively affected those scenes even more. And I think that would have actually made the scenes a bit goofier as well.
That's fair.
Especially if Finn turns up, if he'd put on a tux as well, and they're kind of prancing around. I like the fact that they are literally in their resistance gear, just running around completely out of place there, and everyone's sort of looking at them like, ugh, who are these peasants in our vicinity? So it's an interesting concept. I love like the art of books and looking back at the concept art and the ideas, because there are some things which you think, you know, without 2020 vision, like that would have made the film a lot better. But there are also some things where, for me, I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't put that in. But would you have? Let's throw it back. I mean, would that have made those things any better for you at all? Would you have kind of understood what they were going for?
I don't think it would have made it better. I could just see like a different way they could have gone. Like, instead of having the bait and switch with DJ being in the dungeon, it could have been they need to get close to the Master Codebreaker, so they find clothes, and then, you know, say DJ, not oh god, who was the kind of cameo? Who was the guy that was like, "Not now, darling"? God, I forget.
Justin
Trudeau. Yeah, you know, that could have been DJ, but then of course that didn't happen. But, you know, so then that kind of is just the way they had to get close to him kind of thing. I love the whole good in disguise kind of thing. So I'm happy they still kind of did that, where they were being Imperial officers or First Order officers and things like that. So I mean, I was glad, because I'm all about like costume changes and things. Like, I was kind of hoping Homegirl Rey was going to have a couple different outfits, not just was it 4? 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4 in the total of the trilogy, whereas even Leia had more than that.
Yes, no, you're right. I would have liked to have seen a diverse set of costumes. Rise of Skywalker kind of gave us some, but they were still very similar.
Yeah, so I guess that's why I'm just like, oh, that'd be like kind of really cool kind of thing. But I mean, I'm not.
Fair enough too.
But it's also one of those, I don't think it would have made anything better. I'm really glad they shortened that fathier scene, and I'm glad they didn't have the little sauna scene with the guy showing his little butt. Like, there was that. I'm so like seeing like the deleted scenes. Yeah. Like, the only deleted scene that I kind of wish was still in there somewhere was like Finn changing the stormtroopers' minds, and they turn on Phasma.
Oh, Phasma, yeah.
Like, but I'm always in the camp that it should have been Phasma that was fighting him in The Force Awakens, but I'm so glad we got it in The Last Jedi, because yeah, okay, some of the lines are a bit cheesy, okay, chrome dome, blah blah blah, but that fight is amazing because if you're not looking at the foreground and the background, you've got BB-8 attacking with the chicken walker. Even though I did think that was a little stupid, I was like, really, you're hot wiring a
That's for the kids, that one was.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of got a little tired of the looking at each other gag. Like they did that a couple times, Rose and Finn. Like they did it at least 3 times, and I'm just like, okay, it's not funny. But yeah.
I wish we got more of Phasma because I was so excited to see her. When she came back, I was like, yeah, this is where the fun begins now. And then she's gone. But yeah, their duel was good. And one of my favourite parts of the film, which it's just really odd, but it's a really small part, is when Phasma's just standing there like an absolute chrome boss. She's just standing there, and Rose, she gets up, she shoots her, and the bolt just ricochets off Phasma's armour, but she doesn't move a muscle. She's just standing there staring as if to say, like, and?
Yeah.
Is that, and I was like, and I love that's such a badass moment, which just never gets built upon, and that's one of my biggest regrets. Is Phasma could have been something great, but she wasn't. Phasma. I'm trying to think what else. Hux. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Hux per se, but before I get onto Hux, you mentioned Space Leia, but after that, sorry, I think other than the Battle of Crate, the big moment is, which I need to hear what you think about, is the Holdo maneuver.
I loved it, and I loved the sound design of it. Thank God British cinemas didn't put up stupid signs that said, "Oh, at this point in the movie, the audio breaks. That's intentional." I thought that was great because, and of course, it's built up because you got that triple action kind of everything's coming to a point. You got our 2 protagonists reaching for the legacy saber. We got 2 of our other people about to get executed. We've got Holdo moving in position. So it's payoff.
We've got the resistance ships getting blown to pieces on their way to Crate as well. Don't forget, evacuating.
And I liked it because, and I'm sorry, I don't think it should have been Akbar. I'm actually glad it's a Holdo kind of thing. Akbar is literally only, in my opinion, a big kind of character just because of
it's a meme.
It's a meme, kind of thing. And if you wanted that, that's fair. I'm obviously never going to like, what's your headcanon is your headcanon, but I really liked that kind of thing, and I think she always knew because she said, someone has to be with the cruiser kind of thing. And I love Laura Dern. Oh my God. She is
Academy Award winner, Laura Dern.
She's Ellie Sadler to me from Jurassic Park. Love her. So I was so excited when she was in Star Wars. I was like, yes! But
I dug her so much. And I read the Princess of Alderaan, Leia, a novel by Claudia Gray. I read all the books. And she's in that. So that came out before. So it set her up as this kind of like kooky, crazy person, which we don't necessarily get in this film. And I'm quite glad we didn't. But they did start with her like that, and they toned it back. But I liked Holdo in this film. She followed procedure to a T. She's not telling Poe, who was a subordinate. I can't tell you the plan. You know how hierarchy works. I can't tell you the plan.
Yeah.
And of course, he then goes off on his own and almost, again, like Finn, almost sabotages the whole thing by trying to be a hero. But I agree about the Akbar thing. I've seen a lot of people say they'd like Akbar, but again, that's just to me, that's pandering. It's fan service too much for me because Akbar was there. He said it's a trap, and that's about it, really. And it wouldn't, to me, it wouldn't really have any more emotional weight than seeing like someone like Nyan Num go down in the Rise of Skywalker.
Which,
in fact, I was probably more sad about that.
I missed that until like people were like, "Do you realize that he died?" I was like, "Did he?"
You see a very brief scene when all the ships are going down. You see a very, very brief scene in the cockpit. But I mean, I felt more for that because I was like, "Oh, I like that guy," and he was in the Force Awakens as well. More, but then so was Akbar. But I don't care. I mean, to me, that scene could have only worked if it was Holdo or if it was General Leia herself. Mm-hmm. To the point where she's like, in order to inspire hope, this is what I have to do. But then, obviously, with what Luke Skywalker did later, to have both of them do something so momentous may have felt a bit OTT or even a bit cheesy to have both of them inspire the galaxy in the same film by sacrificing themselves. But it wouldn't have worked so much for Akbar. I get why people didn't connect as much because it was Holdo, because she was a new character. Maybe they didn't.
And they didn't like her approach and like being, because like when I first saw it, I was like, is she a bad guy? Like, because she was very like back, kind of standoffish kind of thing. And like, and even some of the music choices, if you really want to break it apart, you're like, oh, she kind of has like the chord progression of the Emperor's theme, which, by the way, the Emperor's theme is in there when Rey's getting tortured by Snoke and she's in the air. So, I mean, it's funny. You can't tell me it was planned, because it wasn't. We know that they literally, now Daisy's confirmed that they changed it back and forth during production of Tros, but that always was there. That theme was always there, but it's like it's not as planned as people thought. But that, so Holdo had that kind of same chord progression where you're just like, okay, we're going into some minor chords here. Is she a bad guy? Like,
is she a Palpatine as well? Christ.
No, but like,
they do set her up like that. It's clever. It's clever writing to me. They set her up that, because you kind of think like, why is she being such a? Well, at first, like, why is she being such a dick to Poe? Poe's our hero. Why is she talking down to him? And then it's very clear that, chain of command, that is in military and just in work. I mean, I couldn't go up to the CEO and ask to see the financial plans or the goals or something for the year, because they'd be like, no. Because of your level, basically.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and that's what's happening in the Last Jedi. It's quite clear when you look at it, but of course it is quite brusque to start with, because we're not necessarily used to it, but it's such a good decision.
Yeah. One of the other things I loved about this film was you saw consequence. Like, for example, I remember being so moved by, hey, everyone's cheering, we beat the thing. And I love that we have Leia, who just looks down at the screen and sees all the ships that they just lost. Yeah. And I loved that. And I love that we saw Leia is struggling a bit, like with her, like kind of, when they're in the hyper, that shot where they come out of hyperspeed and they, she's thinking about, it was good to see that's like, these people are human, because God, she's been through a lot, so
she lost Han about 3 hours or like 7 hours prior to this, or whatever it might be. She lost Han, killed by her own son, Han's dad.
Yeah.
Spoilers for The Force Awakens. So there's that. Plus the Resistance are having to evacuate again. It seems like, all hope is, how can they do this? And then that also plays into a wonderful scene with Holdo and Leia. Yes. After she's stunned Poe. And she even says, like, look, there's been too many losses. I can't have you do this. But and Holdo's like, you taught me, And then they have the May the Force be with you scene. It's a wonderful scene between two great actresses. And it like you say, it's the consequences, because everyone always says, well, Alderaan got blown up and she didn't batter an eyelid, and Luke saw the charred corpses of his aunt and uncle, and he's like, now I want to go and learn the Force. Now, and it's a different time, of course, different storytelling. Yeah. Now they've got the know-how to show that, and especially like you mentioned in terms of like the military as well, because Poe, he took a dreadnought down, but at what cost? Yeah. Great opening scene, wonderful opening scene with the Resistance and Cobalt Squadron and Poe against the First Order dreadnought. Adrian Edmondson's there, Captain Kennedy's there. It's wonderful, brilliant opening, and we kind of get that moment, I say, of Leia potentially mourning Han as well, which we did get from Luke, but they took it out of the.
Now that I do wish they kept. Like,
I know, as well. You've worked in the industry, but it's like 11 seconds. Come on.
Yeah, it's because it was a good portrayal for Mark's acting as well. I mean, I totally get it, but like, part of me is like, well, I mean, it's still, is it still the longest? Is The Last Jedi still the longest Star Wars film? I know
either that or Attack of the Clones is.
Yeah, so Tros certainly isn't. God, Tros could have used an extra like 10 minutes to let things breathe. But
really could have done to slow it down a bit. Yeah.
I think that's the other reason why I think you either like this movie or you don't, is the pacing. It is again, it's very much, I mean, I will say I'm not a massive fan of The Empire Strikes Back. I have a greater appreciation now being older, but that was not my go-to to put on in the original trilogy. It was either Return of the Jedi or A New Hope, especially A New Hope, because that is such a nice self-contained movie. But I also can understand now as an older adult kind of the intellectual, and that's what this movie does. And I think that's another reason why you either love it or hate it. Like, some people hate the Force Skyping things, but it's like, how else are you going to get, and I'm sorry, JJ didn't get it. I mean, it looked great as a practical set, but you didn't need that where it went dark and lights, and no, just by having editing and the eye lines.
The eye line, that's right. Yeah. And that very subtle sound design as well.
Yeah, it worked. And again, that's also God bless the actors you had, because that could have really flopped.
But he had them both on set. They flew Adam out to Ireland, to Skellig, so he could be there. And I mean, yeah, it's extra cost on the budget, but look what you get from doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It was just brilliant. And I loved that. And I loved that kind of connection, because then it did set up the big kind of them in the last film kind of thing. So it kind of progressed kind of thing. So I mean, I'm happy with that. But yeah, shall we talk about Mary Poppins in space?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on that there's new force powers in this film, and there's new force powers in every Star Wars film. So why do we only get hung up about the sequel trilogy ones? But so Force Skype was brilliant. I really do, and the way they executed that was wonderful. But then obviously, yeah, Admiral Akbar is thrust out into space. See you later, Admiral.
It's a trap.
Yeah, it's not anymore. And then Leia's blasted out into space, and I was like, "Fuck! Is that how she goes out?"
I was
the balls on this man.
I was like, "Oh my god!" Because I mean, even when they go back to it, and oh my god, that music is beautiful. It's just a very teeny tiny bit of her theme, and I was just like, "Oh god, is this it? Is this how we're doing? Wow, are we going there?"
I did think that was a bit morbid though, because before they showed her flickering back to life, I was like, are they really just going to show her floating dead in space? Like, that's the bit. I was like, okay, hammer it home, bro. But no, I was like, the balls on this man, because the scene before, which obviously we'd kind of seen in the trailer, where bastardized version with, but Kylo's he can't fire on a bridge, and you've got that moment where they have that connection, where they sense each other, and he can't do it. And I love that kind of like holy hell moment where suddenly the wingmen just come and are like,
oh yeah,
and that's it. You just don't expect it, and you're like, oh boy. And then Leia senses it, and she gets blown out into space. I was like, oh wow. But of course we now know that she used the Force to create some sort of bubble around her and float back to the ship. And I know there's no gravity in space, and they can't read. How do you make it look good? But
well, yes, this is what I think kind of hurt this scene. Was obviously from like a visual effect and editing perspective, you're kind of touching on it. You have to choose an interesting angle, because otherwise, if you did like a behind the shoulder, like it starts, it could look like kind of, it's like that whole puzzle. Are they going upstairs or going downstairs? It could look like
the ship,
correct. So I get why we had to eventually go from to the side angle. I think what just kind of hurt it was that little her floating through the bridge, where even though they were doing foreshadowing where later she literally puts a line through the dreadnought, just like Holdo does later. Like I said, everything is set up for you in Rian Johnson's films, but you just got to pay attention. I think it's just kind of, that's the only bit, but I remember watching it even with like my brother, because he hadn't seen it in the cinema, so I was like seeing it with him like a year later or something. He kind of just went, wait, what? But I mean, it is what it is, but it just kind of was like, okay. And I mean, I guess it sets up her being a proper Jedi in Tros, but it just, that's the only one that I mean, I have appreciation for it, but I am like, and the music is amazing, John Williams, king, but yes. This was kind of like, okay.
Do you think the film, I mean, look, we're talking about this film because we both dig this film massively, but do you think, because I always think this, and certainly on the lead up to this show, I was like, had Ryan just gone there and just been like, that's it for the character, and I had this massive kind of like shock moment, would that? How do you think that would have impacted the film? Could it have like made it? I don't say better, but how do you think it would have impacted it, like positively or negatively, if he'd just gone there?
I think it would have, in light of Carrie passing. I think, and obviously they would have never known that. Obviously, if they had say the times, but I think it would have upset me. They would have had to change it some way, because I think they would have found it too upsetting that not only did your character die in this film, she died in real life, kind of thing. And I think it would have just been too close. I mean, obviously she passes in The Rise of Skywalker, which they kind of didn't have any choice. I'd love to spend a few minutes talking about what would have happened if she sort of lived, but like, I think it would have been too hard. I think you think this is divisive now. I think if she would have gone out that way, I think even I would have a problem with that. if I'm honest. If Leia was to go out, I would have kind of like what I've written in my own headcanon and things, is she going out fighting, like saving the resistance, almost kind of like a Holdo maneuver, but I didn't want her doing the Holdo maneuver, but basically kind of like, I will take out every last bastard I need to save everybody. But yeah, I would have had serious issues if this was how Leia passed in the actual sequel trilogy.
That's fair enough, and of course, with Luke and his sacrifice at the end, then I think it would have been. I think people would have actually revolted because they're bad enough now about this film. Had Ryan Johnson come along and killed off both the characters in one film in the way that they went. Again, I think Luke went wonderfully into the night, but the world fades away with a smile. Perfect. Whereas obviously General Leia getting blown out the wind again. Sometimes what you've just said actually has kind of made me think. Actually, you're probably right. Sometimes I look at it and think, do you know what? It could have been for the film. It could have been good for the film because of where they could have the motivations for the characters. Could that could have drawn Luke out somehow, or he could have come back to the Force and sensed it, and that's when he's like, had I been there, this guy could have changed it. But then actually that would have given people more ammunition against him. But then, like you say, the fact that obviously the real world happenings, it would have made it. No, again, I don't want to say disrespectful because, like you say, you can't predict what's going to happen, but it would have been a hard pill to swallow had that been the case. And I suppose, the way that they played it ended up being the best way. But that scene, in terms of the Leia popping, just, again, I wouldn't be able to tell someone how to execute that scene perfectly, but it's a hard one to pull off. And when I saw it in the cinema, having seen some of the comedy before, because I love the action and I love the character modes, but the comedy kind of put me on edge a bit. And I saw that and I thought, okay, we're only about half an hour into the film here, and I know we've got about 2 hours left, so what else we're going to get? But saying that, I love the comedy between Rey and the Caretakers. I thought that was brilliant, a kind of slapstick kind of comedy.
And that was just enough. Yeah, like that's enough. Because it's almost
Star Wars comedy.
That's a situational kind of thing. Because I can relate to that. I am the golden klutz. I am my father's daughter. I am a golden klutz. That would be me. And it made me actually relate to Rey even more. And it actually played off how she is in The Force Awakens, because she pulls the wrong breaker and all of a sudden she's like, oh, wrong one. Or, she's not perfect. I think that's why it got me so angry when people were like, oh, she's this Mary Sue, can't make mistakes. I'm like, are you watching the same film I am?
Captured in The Force Awakens as well.
Yeah, I'm just like, But anyway, I digress. But so it played to her character kind of like, oops. And that comedy is so great because you don't have to have words exchange. And just to have like the one like I think it's been cut, but like sharpening the knife and like kind of giving her dead eye is kind of like, it was great. Like, no, I like the Caretaker stuff. But I will say I'm glad they cut out that final challenge or final lesson, because it's a good lesson, but I don't know how I feel about like them making her wave the lightsaber and she's kind of like that. So I guess let me rephrase that. I wouldn't have minded if the other lessons kept in, or that lesson kept in, if they didn't have the, hey, spin your lightsaber and everything. But I also,
before that is great. Like running on the beach looks beautiful. And
it was in the behind the scenes like featurette. And I was like, oh my God, this looks awesome. And we're like, where was that? But also I do understand people's kind of concerns that it really would have made Luke look like an absolute asshole as well. So I get that. But then you got people going, well, there was no third lesson. So it's very tricky, but I think it is a good lesson, to be honest. And it's true, because then it also is mirroring why Poe and Finn fail in this film. So it has a point, and sadly we lost it because of timing. But I think some of the execution didn't quite work. But I do love that, Rey is kind of like, you're not the Luke Skywalker I thought. And I bet you a lot of people would have been like, yeah, I relate to this.
Sadly, yeah, as we've seen. And then since the Mandos come out, they're like, that's my Luke Skywalker. No, they're all Luke Skywalker. And on that scene, it was just before that deleted scene was the wonderful moment where we get the Kylo failed you, I won't moment, and the Darth Sidious reveal from Luke Skywalker. And again, it's just excellent an excellent scene between two wonderful actors, just face to face. No, no bells or whistles. They're on a set and they're just acting against each other, and it's so good. And then obviously later on we get the Ren reveal where we're hearing different stories about what happened at the temple, and Luke says something, and then obviously when Rey finds out, she's like, did you try to kill him? And that's what sets her off, and she's just like, I'm going to follow my path now, because in my head Kylo said that he's going to turn to the light, so I'm going to go and save him, and that's the worst thing she could have done. And in that test where it foreshadows it, because the test with the caretakers and swinging the lightsaber was, don't rush in headstrong, just because what you think you see is the worst. And of course she fights Luke. Luke does best her until she grabs a lightsaber against an antenna. And like people saying she didn't beat him. He had a bloody antenna, he had a stick, and she just then got a lightsaber and was about to lop his head off.
Yeah, and one of the things I loved about this was, and actually kind of going back to the throne room scene as well, what I love is you're seeing our characters switch when Kylo Ren, because we'll call him Kylo Ren at the time because he's not Ben yet. He's at absolute peace until he's worried about her for a second. He loses it, and then you see him kind of center himself again and go very calm. Whereas she, oh my God, I love it when she twirls the saber and screams. Yes. I was just like, oh my God, I love Daisy Ridley and I love Rey because it's that whole thing they teach you in martial arts and things. Even if you're smaller than your opponent, make yourself look 10 times bigger. And again, it plays to her character. She's been alone for so long. She's got to make herself look tough, even if she's not. It's like kind of like carry a big stick. And I just love it. I know there's a big controversy of which I didn't even catch the visual effect person in me until the special, it came out, where all of a sudden, where'd the other guy's blade go?
Yes, yeah. You can see him like do the stabbing motion, but it's not. It's like he's just trying to like randomly kidney punch her now for no reason.
But, I mean, it's a clever editing technique. You're like, oh, okay, but
you can't use that as a stick to beat the film with, which some people are. Like, have you seen any other film in history? Because in that case, because I've got something to tell you, there's plenty of those in all of the other big films you like.
Anaconda. Literally just watched it yesterday, and when the boat is quote backing up, guess what? They just reversed the footage because the waterfall is going up. Like
exactly, it's meant. And like Gladiator's got half the cast wearing bloody Rolex watches. There's cars in the background. It's like it happened. The Mandalorian. They got Jane's guy. I didn't see anyone saying, "Well, look, let's cancel the man." I've
never seen that. I've watched that episode like 4 times now. I cannot see it. Like
they've taken it out now. But if you look on YouTube, somebody's saved it for prosperity. But the whole test thing is great because Luke himself is kind of he's not rushing in headlong to the First Order war because he knows that what's he going to do. Yeah. Whereas Rey, in the deleted scene, she rushes into the village, for no reason. She rushes in to save Ben Solo. Whoops! Almost gets killed because of it, and almost destroys the Resistance because of it. So the test itself is there, but I see taking that scene out. Yeah, the running on the beach was great, but it didn't show either of the characters in that. Obviously, Rey, it's her test, but it didn't make Luke look great. So I'm glad they took it out, despite the fact that it is a great set piece. I'm trying to think, like the other major scene, other than the ending, is other than the fact that Snoke's a badass throughout this film, is Luke and Yoda on Acto. And
yes.
I sent you a clip about that as to what I thought, but I want to hear what you thought about that scene.
I absolutely loved it, and I remember the first time like watching it. It was so strange hearing Yoda say Rey, because obviously like we know all our original characters and and then kind of obviously the prequel, but to hear an original trilogy character say our main character's name. I mean, I know Luke had done it, Leia had done it, Han had done it, but it just, I don't know, there was something about Yoda, maybe because it's in the Frank Oz voice and it hasn't really changed, but just it was amazing. And I loved the puppet. I'm so glad they had the puppet back and just the music underneath it. And the message was also great too. Like I love these kind of trolling. And again, they set it up, those books contain nothing the girl, Rey doesn't already have, i.e. smart girl. She took the books.
Yep.
Because I guess he doesn't say those books. He says that tree or so, like it's all again all set up, but I loved that whole they grow what we grow beyond, and that's the true burden of being a master. And it's true. Like, I don't have children, sadly. I don't think that's going to be a blessing in my life, but I have helped kids. Well, I say kids, but people in a film school and things. And I mean, I'll see them pick up skills that sometimes would take me, when I was first starting out, a year or so, that now, because of the younger generation, they can just process things faster. They pick it up in hours, and it kind of bums you out. But then at the same time, you're like, but you know what? That's okay. And yeah, so I mean, I guess because I'm not a parent, unlike yourself, like that didn't hit me as well, not in a bad way, but like it wasn't as poignant to me, but it was still such a great moment. And again, it was that moment that you needed to allow the movie to breathe. And again,
Absolutely.
this is to that whole pacing debate. Some people didn't like that. I loved it. And I didn't realize how much I loved it until I saw it missing from the last installment. So yeah, it was. And I think it also sets up Luke kind of going, all right, I'm going to kind of get my head out of my derriere and kind of, yeah, okay.
I've got to get back in the battle because, and the kind of, what's it called? The morbid thing about that is the novel also sets it up, but the robes that he's wearing in that scene are like a sacrificial robe. So he's actually going to go and kill himself in that scene, and it is actually like part of canon. He's going to go and set himself on fire. So I was like, oh, great. So actually Yoda saved him as well. But it's just like the music, hearing Yoda's theme, the way that the camera tracks behind him, and you get the silhouette of Yoda was such a perfect way to introduce him.
That's what I was like to my buddy Charlie. I was literally like, I was like just like hitting him, like, oh my god.
The hand went down on the knee. It's like, fuck, here it comes. And it was just, again, that scene, that moment isn't set up, and that's why I love it. It's not like this. It's not like Luke's ever kind of said. You don't see him kind of thinking, I need help with this. He never says to Rey, I need guidance myself to train you, wink, wink. Yeah. Nothing like that. We just think he's an old git on the island. And then you just see the silhouette of the little ears, and then the music starts, and then you get him like stamping his feet. And it's like, this is it, man. This is it. And the dialogue in that scene is bonkers good. The Yoda wisdom is wonderful. It's like, again, I know people have said it, but I'm going to say it as well. It was like Mark Hamill was transported back. You watched the documentary, and he was transported back to 1980 again, or 1979 when they filmed it. And he's almost like a child again, like Luke was in the original. The way he's talking to him, like a spoiled kid, like trying to talk up to his master, and he's just like, "No, I'm not having any of it. He'll whack you on the head." Yeah. And I love it. And yeah, and obviously we are what they grow beyond. It's wonderful. It's just and failure is the greatest teacher. You've got to fail. You've got to pick yourself up, man. You can't just wallow. You've got to get out in a fight if that's what needs to be. And he also says Ben Solo as well. Like, lose Ben Solo, you did. Lose Rey, we must not. So he name drops Ben as well. Yeah. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful man, and one which could have clanged if they got it wrong, because it could have been seen to be overly nostalgic or poorly written, or it could have looked bad, or the chemistry might not have been as it was. But it's one of those moments that happen a lot in this film where the stars align, and for me, it's one of the best scenes in the entire saga. For me, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, no, it was great. And again, the thing is, my buddy Arzu said it the best. So these are not my original words, and I might not be paraphrasing the best. But she said, fan service is not a bad thing if it serves the character's story, not the fans. And that's why, for me, this is comparison with the Yoda thing. The Yoda thing serves a purpose. Yes, it's fan service, but it also serves a point for our main characters as well. There is a reason why he is there, blah, 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 blah. Him lifting, I know, hot take here, him taking the X-Wing out of the water in Arc 2 and The Rise of Skywalker, that's for the audience. That's not for Rey. Rey can give two flips about
a lot of that film is for the audience. But
and it was interesting because I know this is kind of a very kind of main topic right now is fan service. Same thing with The Mandalorian. Why is it working? Because it serves the purpose. Like the hot take again, I kind of didn't want it to be Luke and the Mandalorian. However, it makes sense. Why wouldn't it be anybody else? Because of course, right now we know he's looking for Jedi and things. So why
He
would it
pretty
be
much is
anybody
the
else?
Last Jedi as well, that
Yeah,
we know of, other than
exactly.
Ezra and Ahsoka, but they're not. One might not be alive, and the other isn't technically a Jedi. So,
Well, yeah, and it's also one of those that would also just set another thread of, okay, here's a whole nother, we don't know who this is. Wait, what? We're still wondering where our homeboy Cal Kestis is. I don't know.
here's Cal Kestis. Go and buy the game, by the way. It's half price on all of your stores. But I would have loved Cal Kestis because I love the game. But
Yeah.
it made absolute sense for Luke Skywalker. I didn't want the Mandalorian to turn into. I didn't want all these cameos because I thought, how are they going to do it? But
that's another
they did it well
in itself. And again, this is having faith in. I didn't know a lot of Dave Filoni, but and sorry to sound like I'm name dropping a little bit, but by working on a project with Jon Favreau with The Lion King and things, I know he painstakingly researches, and just like Rian Johnson, thinks of every reason why a character choice is. I mean, he is an actor. He was an actor before he was a director, and I think that's why he's
an everyman.
Yeah, and that's why he's brilliant at what he does. So that's why, again, it works. It serves not only us as fans, but it also ties in with the characters. And so again, that's why I feel the Yoda scene very much works in The Last Jedi for sure.
If I can hear Yoda's theme on repeat throughout my life, I would do. I would do that. What about the final battle then? Because I think that's we can obviously mop up anything else, but the final battle on Crate is one of the most visually gorgeous things in Star Wars, but I don't want to say in film because it's what people say. Like, it's the best thing. It's one of the best films ever. One of the best scenes. But in like sci-fi space films, The Last Jedi is one of the best looking films of the genre, and it genuinely is stunning. And the Battle of Crate, or like the duel on Crate, and the force projection, and do you think that's it for the Resistance and everything? Hope is lost, and then. There's so much going on. Like the speed of battle, the Falcon swoops in. Finn's going to sacrifice himself, which we mentioned earlier.
Oh, I thought that was going to happen. I thought that was another moment where I was like, oh God, is this it? Is this how we're going to do it? And at first...
Don't do it, John. John, because I like John Boyega, so I was like, don't do it, please. Get away.
Yeah.
I was like, you're really going to do it?
Yeah.
Because of what had happened in the film. Like, killing Snoke was such a badass thing to do.
Yeah.
And blowing Leia out of the thing and almost killing her and putting Luke on the island. I was like, nothing. It almost felt like nothing was out of the game here. They could just kill Finn off here.
Yeah, exactly. There was that kind of stake, like, what's going to happen? Who's going to make out of this? Because that's what happens in those middle films of trilogies. You're like, oh God, where is this going? But no, the sound design was brilliant. I love like the triple shot where like the TIE fighters line up, and it took me a couple viewings to catch it, but like Rey hitting all three, and again, people were like, Mary Sue, loved it. But I love that she's like, oh, I like this. But what I also like is we see Chewie as a pilot.
Yes,
and I love the porks. I have like 3, and I always have. Yeah, I love the porks. I even to this day like love them. But I love that we saw Chewie as a pilot. We don't get to see that. I mean, we got to see it a little bit in Solo when he kind of was like, oh, he's gonna be the co-pilot, but like it was awesome. And I love kind of Rey going, whoa, I like this. Yeah,
it's fun, little fun moments like. And people said that about Rogue One, which is why they liked a lot of which is the best film of them all. Like a lot of the scenes on Scarif when you've got the X-wing pilots, they're gunning people down and they're cutting to their faces and they're kind of like laughing, like they're having fun, and it reminded them of the kind of the feel of those old films. And Star Wars doesn't always have to feel like the old films, but having Rey in the cockpit, not being like uber serious, like I've got to having her like whooping and having a lot of fun. It brings something, another dimension.
Yeah. Definitely. And I love, and also I would also say, as a marketing campaign, The Last Jedi had the best marketing, the best posters. They had the best trailers.
Jesus, yeah.
I mean, that use of the color red. Oh my God. Red. And it wasn't just a trope. Like it's in the film. It is everywhere. Red. Everywhere. And the way Crate is, and it was something we had never seen before. Because at first we're like, oh God, yay, another snow planet. And then we see the red and it's just beautiful. I love the crystal foxes. I love that shot where we see Leia with like her thing over her because her eyes are just absolutely stunning. It reminded me of like kind of like her eyes and when she's looking at Han in the carbonation chamber. Like it just was just yes. Sorry, this is where I'm gushing, but love it. Great. Love it. So, and I love that, we saw the crystals underneath, and it's also one of the best designed levels, I feel, in Battlefront 2.
Right after the playthrough, though.
Yeah, I love it. And I loved the, they're not AT-ATs, because I'm sorry, I don't say at. It's an acronym. But I think it's like, they're like they're not ATS.
ACT, no, ACT was Rogue One. The guerrilla walkers, they're called, aren't they?
And I love that I even love that little detail where like they've purposely reinforced the front legs so they can't be knocked out. I mean, it's just those little things I just love. And yeah, I also want to talk about the whole lifting rocks thing, because this, I feel, is a story thread that unfortunately it could have had a lot of weights that they never really pursued. But that is kind of Rey revealing she can do some powerful shit. Like, before then, no one really saw, quote, Jedi Rey. In The Force Awakens, it was, Finn was passed out, didn't see her fighting. The only thing he kind of is like, oh, how did you do that? And she's like, I don't know, kind of thing. But no one sees it. Luke doesn't even see it really on the island. He kind of sees, oh, whoa, hang on, my nephew and this girl are somehow talking to each other, but he sees some potential, but he doesn't see it. But I mean, her lifting the rocks, and also the reason why she can do it and Luke couldn't, was Luke always was like, this is impossible, this is impossible, this is impossible.
I don't believe it, yeah.
Rey, actually, even though she doubts herself in a lot of things, believes, she's like, all right, I'm going to give it a go, and believes in herself. But the thing is, once those rocks appear and we have kind of like the Space Moses moment, this kind of is a big shift, because now all of a sudden she's going to be the face of the resistance, and also kind of like, do I even want this? I'm just literally trying to figure out who I am. Now I have this stress, and then all of a sudden she now gets what Luke Skywalker was on about. It was kind of like, oh, this is what I don't want to be a hero of the galaxy. Like, look what it did to Luke. Why do you think I want to be part of this kind of thing? And they obviously never really showed that. I mean, they showed kind of the consequence, and I did like that intro, the consequence of the Force and things like that. But it's just like they kind of were just like, okay, yeah, Rey could do this cool stuff, but it's kind of, and I guess I wanted that interchange between Rey and Kylo Ren / Ben to be like, yeah, they will use you until you are dead in the dirt, i.e., exegol kind of thing. And they just never really touched on it. And maybe that's so looking into it and too kind of intellectual kind of thing. But it is kind of one of those threads that I just kind of was like, oh, that would have been cool to kind of deal with that. Kind of like, what if I don't want to be the hero? Because I've seen what being the hero does to you kind of thing. But I digress.
No, it's you're talking about earlier on. We're talking about the fallout and ramifications of, like, for example, Poe not following orders and stuff like that. So it's a thread that was kind of established that there are, for every act there is consequences. So it's a shame. I know what you mean. It's a shame that we didn't get that, and maybe a time jump could have helped that.
Yeah. But
then with a time jump, she may have also had time to kind of reconcile with the fact that this is potentially my calling.
Yeah.
But no, I like, oh mate, the moment when Luke just comes out against the walkers. I had no idea he was a force projection. I'm not even going to pretend with the whole, dragging your foot across the salt thing.
Oh, my father-in-law actually
no idea.
Yeah, my father-in-law, he's a very clever man. And again, like I said, the clues are all there. He knew that he wasn't really there because they'd made a point of showing his feet, and then Kylo Ren's feet leaving a mark, but Luke wasn't. Like, it's one of the, you're paying attention. And yeah, my father-in-law, a brilliant man, completely calls it. He was like, yeah, he's not there.
What a man. Because Ryan knows that everyone's going to be so, like, I was so into this moment. I was glued. I wasn't even noticing that guy. I was just like, what's going to happen? This is the fight of the century. Christ. Yeah. Is this how Luke's going to go out? I can't see him go out in combat. He's going to punk Kylo, but having seen what I've already seen, what's going to happen here? But I thought it was a great, and it is the most Luke Skywalker thing of all time. It's the most Jedi thing of all time. Yeah. He's taken down the First Order with no violence whatsoever, and he hasn't harmed anyone apart from himself.
Yeah.
In doing so, and it is incredible, and it's something. It follows on directly from Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That's how he wasn't going to kill Palpatine. he wanted to save his father, but he wasn't going to do it via combat. He wanted to save his sister in the Resistance and Rey, but he wasn't going to do it by combat because he knew that wasn't the way to do it. It's not the Jedi way, but it wasn't also the way to do it. The Force, he connected back to the Force, and he knew his only way to do it was potentially basically to give himself up in order to save everyone and provide that spark that we see at the end with Broom Boy and the kids. And I think it was the best way for him to go out. Had he just turned up, fought Kylo, had a great lightsaber battle, and then got killed, I don't see how anyone could turn around and say that would have been a better ending, because surely people would have been like, oh, the greatest Jedi have all got taken down by the emo boy or whatever.
Exactly.
This is the best. It was an incredible scene. The score for the Battle of Crate is just unreal. Like you say, the visuals are amazing. Like when the dust settles from the ATM 6 walkers, taking him out and he flicks his sleeve. But when the dust settles and it's just the two of them and it's that wide shot of both of them, just like the very samurai type shot, Kurosawa-esque.
Yes.
It's and then he got the red dust in the foreground. He got the mountains in the background, the cracked salt. Honestly, it's just bonkers how good that is as an ending. And again, it's all subjective. You don't have to like the film, but honestly, just to look at that and be like, "This is rubbish." It pains me to think that happened, but I think it's great. And again, Mark Hamill's very good. And the emotion he gets into his voice when he's talking to Ben, he's like, I will not be the last Jedi. And Ben is just so angry at him. And and the follow-on when he finds his dad's dice and they fade away. It's great. And but then in that moment, it also sets Hux up again as a villain. But then, to be fair, actually, I wasn't a huge fan of Hux, but the Hux does get two great moments in this film. So that one when he's like sneering through the door, but also when after Snoke's been cut in half and Ben's like Kylo's on the floor, and Hux goes to reach for his blaster to finish him off, and he kind of puts it back again. Now, that is the Hux I wanted, not the kind of like snivelling little turd we got instead. Because in the first film, I thought Hux was great in the first film. I didn't think he was over the top. He's great. And then to kind of, because Ryan even said, he thought it would be interesting to provide a different type of foil with the character. Fair dues, but to me it didn't work. And that was Donal's idea, actually, to kind of have him go for the blaster.
Smart.
But the way that scene started, the way it ended, and just the final sequence and act is, it's just goosebumps, man.
I literally was like, okay, I never have it where I was like, yep, I absolutely know where they're going, but like, I was like, this would be really cool. I mean, obviously in light of recent events, but to see like a coup where that's how, Kylo Ren gets back to the Resistance kind of thing, where it's like, and that's how we can get a stormtrooper. And even when I saw the Sith troopers kind of thing, I was like, yep, Finn is going to kind of lead a stormtrooper rebellion. And then like, I never, thought the Knights would turn on him or what, I don't know. Like I obviously had a lot of different crazy theories, but I was like, ooh, that would be a cool shift where it's like, there's this coup happening. And Hux is like, and I think that was kind of some of the stuff they were going for in that Duel of the Fates kind of thing. I was a bit gutted about that.
Yeah, they could have done a lot more, but again, in a film which is as good as this, not everything's going to work. So before we move on to any other kind of negatives, was there any other positives about this film you wanted to shout out?
I think we've covered everything. Like, it would probably come to me when I'm like in bed going, I should have said this.
Should have said that. Trying to think now. We've mentioned Snoke, he's cool. The planet of Crate. When Luke arrives, I like that because he kind of thinks, shit, Kylo Ren's going to come and slaughter them all because of the way they make him walk me to that. I was like, oh no, it's just Luke. The theme of hope. I love the theme of let the past die. Move forward. The past is the past. Even he's even like the Jedi, the Sith. He might as well have said Jedi, Sith, OT, PT. Let it die.
It was a bit meta.
But then of course that. But I think it was so good as a message. Like this is we need to move forward as a franchise. As people, the characters. We need to move forward. We can't just rehash the same old stuff. But I love that message. And then. Kind of went back on it, but other than that, I mean, there's so much more. Like the ending with Broom Boy, I like that.
Yeah, I liked that as well. That message of kind of and it wasn't even like anybody can be a Jedi. It was more the anybody can be a hero kind of thing. Obviously it can be translating, and it was funny because it's one of those. If you don't pay attention, you could miss Broom Boy where he calls the broom, it's very quick, and I liked that. It's one of those, it's not in your face. It's not, hey, audience, look at this, so I don't know. I liked it, but I mean, it would have been cool if that could even be like, I don't know, maybe the ending of The Rise of Skywalker or something, but I don't know.
Because it did feel like a saga ending shot, didn't it, really?
It really did. But yeah, I mean, obviously, everything hindsight is 2020, and I know we got to wrap up soon, but I also wonder what would have happened. What film would we have gotten after The Last Jedi if our lovely princess had, stayed alive in real life, kind of thing? I think there would have been more of a redemption kind of thing with Ben and things like that. So I do think they were under extreme pressure and stress, because there was even interviews with her where she was like, yeah, the last film is my film, and everything. And it just, it breaks my heart every year when the anniversary comes up, that I just get so mad at the universe, where I'm just like, why? But
at no age as well to go, but no, you're absolutely right. And it had, what would the film have been like had Ryan directed 9? Because I know he kind of turned it down because he wanted to have that break and to do Knives Out, which turned out to be for the best. But there's so many what ifs. And The Last Jedi set everything up. It didn't leave the incumbent of Episode 9, whoever that was going to be, turned out to be JJ. It didn't leave them with nothing. It left them, like Leia said, we have everything we need now to go and smash Episode 9 out of the park. But it is what it is. So we mentioned Hux, we mentioned like Space Force, Space Leia, Mary Poppins Leia, and a few other things we didn't quite jive with. But so to kind of like end on that, then, was there anything else about this film which we so love that you kind of thought that wasn't great?
I think we touched on it. I mean, my things every time, even now to this day, rewatching, is kind of DJ character not really working, the Poppins Leia. But it's so funny, like kind of now that we've seen all 3 films in their entirety, you kind of get why they had to do what they had to do. I mean, mine also one is having the film literally start right after the other one, because I do think that kind of hindered the trilogy in a way. But then at the same time, contradicting myself, I don't know how we could have gotten that Rey kind of trying to find herself sort of thing. I don't know. So it's so hard to say. But that's the only things I can really think of that was like, that still to this day just doesn't land with me. But yeah.
That's fair enough. Now, I mentioned all mine other than the your mum phone jokes at the beginning, which is like, not a great start.
Marvel humor, basically. It has Marvel humor. Like, I was watching Ragnarok yesterday, and Ragnarok is brilliant, but I also know that's such a tonal shift for a lot of the Marvel films. But
especially the Thor films.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about the second one. But like, it's one of those, but it's weird. And yes, a lot of the humor in The Last Jedi just doesn't hit with me. Like, some of it I've kind of enjoyed now, but yeah, that is where I will say Tros and The Force Awakens is stronger, is the humor. It feels better, that more situational. But yeah, other than that, I do love this film. I do love it.
Yeah, that's it for me as well. I have no other negatives. I dig this film so much. In fact, I actually generally do want to go and watch it after we've done this now. So that is our retrospective look back at The Last Jedi, a modern film, but doesn't mean it can't be a good film. And it is. And whether you like the film or not, we certainly hope you enjoyed what we had to say. Do let us know what you think. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on tonight to talk The Last Jedi.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this. Like, I could still go, but I'm just like, oh man, it's almost 11 o'clock at night.
I know, I need a cup of tea and a biscuit before I go to bed. We mentioned earlier on all of your ventures and all of your creations that you have online. Where can the world find you and everything you do online?
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm very prominent kind of like on my personal Twitter now. Unfortunately, at the moment, Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge is on a bit of a creative hiatus, but I'm doing a lot of kind of game streaming now on Twitch, which that is Shenanigan, spelled with an EN, _plays on Twitch and also on Twitter. And then you can also follow me on just my normal Twitter, which is just at Shenanigan. And check out the network that I'm part of, like with the Holochronicles and things like that, which is beyondtheblastdoors.com. And you can find all sorts of articles, there's something for everyone, whatever kind of aspect of Star Wars you enjoy.
Yep, honestly, go and check it out. Obviously, make sure you check out that Camino episode because I hear that's a wicked episode. But,
I'll link it. I'll put the link on my Twitter either tonight or tomorrow. So definitely.
Self-promotion. Yeah, go and check all of that out. And if you do, let Shannon know you've checked it out and let her know that you dig it as well because you're going to. As you know, if you want to find me, whatIwatchdtonight.co.uk, just search What I Watched Tonight across all of the socials and Letterboxd, and you'll find what I'm getting up to on there. If you like what you've just heard, please do tell your friends that there's an episode about The Last Jedi. And be polite if you've got any comments because we're all film fans and we're all here to have a good time. And if you do have a spare 30 seconds, please consider leaving a good review for the show on your podcast platform of choice because it helps the show grow. It gets more listeners in and it means I get a chance to talk to more of you guys about film. And that's ultimately why we're here. But thank you again, Shannon, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. But until next time, from me, see ya.